Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tori and today I am setting up my bullet journal for 2024. Originally, I had planned to just continue using my traveler's notebook size bullet journal, but when I counted the pages that I had left, I would have only gotten 1 month in the remainder of that journal, so I figured that I would just go ahead and start a new journal and just use that as like scrap paper. So I am using an Archer and Olive notebook from the Equinox 2023, so fall 2023 collection. This notebook is no longer available. I did check yesterday to see if it was still available, but it's not, unfortunately. But I do have an affiliate code with Archer and Olive if you're interested in getting one of their other notebooks. And it is Torey Ramos, and I'll have that linked below for you as well. So this is the notebook that I will be using. It is a B6 sized notebook, and I think that this will just work out perfectly for me being able to travel with the notebook. I really liked the Traveler's notebook size notebook because it was easy to carry around. So I think that I will like this one even more. So this is the cover. Isn't it gorgeous? And then it's got a gilded edge and like this little fancy part right here. And then it's 160 GSM dot grid pages. And I've penciled out everything that I'm planning to do for this particular notebook. And we will kind of jump right in. I am going to be using not very many supplies. I've pulled out some of my Pigma Micron markers. I have 01, 05, and 08 pulled out. I've got my favorite Tombow dual brush pen, which you can't even read anymore. This is the N89. This is my absolute all-time favorite one. And then I also have 992 pulled out. And then I have a washi tape. This is a PET tape from the washi tape shop. I do not remember what this is. I purchased it several months ago and I have not used it yet. It's like not even been opened. So I figured that I would use it for my actual setup today. So this will be my primary decorative element for my spreads. And then I just have my favorite ruler. I will link this below if you're interested in it. It goes up to 8 inches. It's just like a clear acrylic ruler. And I really like that for the A5 size notebooks. This is obviously smaller than an A5, but this actually goes over the edge of an A5 notebook. So you can draw a complete line instead of having to move your ruler around. So this is one of my favorite rulers. It came in a 2-pack. So if it's still available on Amazon, I'll link that below for you if you're not interested in moving your ruler around when you're setting up your bullet journals. So like I said, I've got everything pre-sketched out for my journals. One thing that I like to do, and this is written in pencil, so it's going to be a little bit hard to see. I like to put the start date and the end dates in this little kind of nameplate page. So I'll do my name, and then I will write January 1st, 2024 for my journal start date. And then when I finish it, I will put the end date here as well. So I'm not going to be talking throughout. I'm not going to be doing live talking throughout my setup. I will do a voiceover. So I will go ahead and get started. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this notebook because I'm obsessed with it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'd love to know what you think as well. All right, let's jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is just write my name and then my date started and date ended in my cover plate page of this journal. Once I've got that done, I will move on to my very beginning title page. I just used, I believe, the 05 and 01 for my microns for this. I'm skipping that first page because I'm going to turn this into a pocket to hold a grid spacing guide and a year at a glance. I'm hoping that this journal will last me for 6 months, though I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be the case. I didn't add as many beginning pages as I did in my Q4 setup for last year. I'm thinking for this year, I'm going to start a yearly collections journal. The idea I got from Jess or Jashi Koren, and I will link her channel below if you're interested. I really like the idea of not having to transfer anything that I'm tracking for a year over and over again to multiple different journals. And I can see myself using 2 to 3 journals per year, and I'm just not interested in doing those over and over again. So I'm also going to be creating a yearly collections journal, and I'll have a setup video for that coming up soon as well. So anyways, back to what I was doing. I'm creating a pocket here, and in this pocket I'm going to keep my year at a glance, which is just basically all of the months and which days will fall on which days of the week and all that good stuff. And then a grid spacing guide, because I have not used a B6 journal before. This is my first time. So I know I'm going to need to reference a grid spacing guide. I will not be completing these 2 on camera, but you will see me make this pocket for them. There was a tiny lip of a piece of paper left over because those first 2 pages are funnily adhered together. So I'm just cutting off a piece of that PET tape from the washi tape shop, and I'm using that to really hold down that piece of extra paper. I also pulled out this Gingham Collection 6x8 scrapbook paper, and I'm going to pull out one of these sheets of scrapbooking paper, and I'm going to use that to cover the full pocket that I'm making at the beginning of my journal. And then I'm also going to implement this scrapbook paper throughout the rest of my setup. I hadn't originally intended to use scrapbook paper, but I wanted this pocket to be a little bit more covered, I guess you can say. So I ended up pulling this out, and since I used it on this pocket, I felt that I had to include it in the rest of my setup as well. So I will be doing that throughout my setup too. And then once I get this trimmed down so that it is the same size as my pocket, I will just be using an 1/8 inch score tape to adhere my kind of flap that I've got going on here down to actually create that pocket. And then you'll see me pull out 2 of the pieces of paper that I cut from an Archer and Olive notepad. I just kind of cut those out and sized them so that they should fit inside this pocket, but I wouldn't actually know until the pocket was created. So that's what I'm testing out once we get to that portion. So that'll be right after I just take the backing off of this score tape and get the pocket adhered down. So these are the 2 pieces of paper here, and that's where I will be placing my grid spacing guide and my year at a glance as well. I am going to pull out some more of this PET tape, and I'm just going to fully decorate this whole page. So I struggled a lot with this PET tape. It does have a backer on it, like most of the tapes from the washi tape shop. And I don't know if it's because I was extra shaky today when I was getting this set up, but I had the hardest time separating the PET tape from the actual backer. So there are several points throughout this video where it's just me trying to get the backing off of. I tried to cut out some of them, but I didn't want to cut out all of them because it would just really just taken forever, and I didn't really want to do that. So some of that's left in, some of it's cut out. So hopefully it's a nice mixture of the both so that it's not too annoying or weirdly cut, if that makes sense. I am going to be using for most of my titles, because once I realized how shaky my hands were, I decided that I didn't want to handwrite my titles that like I had originally planned. I had planned to handwrite all my titles out, but for some reason when I woke up today, I was just a very, very shaky Torey today. So I decided that I would just do some stamping, and I will pull out my letter block alpha set from Amazon. It is one of my all-time favorite stamps that I have. I love using it. It's basically, I think it was one of the first stamping tools that I purchased when I started recording these types of videos, and I just love it. It's been going great for the last like 2 years that I've been using it, so fantastic. I'm stamping out my titles, anything that I'm stamping, with this dark brown ink from Studio Calico. And then I'm just going to stamp out on this pocket grid spacing and year at a glance. That way I've just kind of got a little title for my pocket. Now, if I do move into another B6, I will be able to just add these two to my next journal, or if I go to an A5, I can just create another pocket and slide these into that. If I move back into a traveler's notebook size journal, I might have a little bit more difficulties with that, but I'm not sure what I'll be doing next. I have the Jack numbers, from Studio Calico. I don't know if these are available anymore because I purchased these last year sometime, but I'm going to be using these to stamp out my big numbers in my setup today. So I will be using it to stamp out 2024, and then on our next page I will be stamping out a number for each of the months that I'll be adding for my future log. So I'll also use these numbers on the next spread as well for that. So I stamped 2024 kind of vertically, but sideways. You can see on the screen what I'm referring to. But when I was kind of planning out my spread, I really liked the idea of it just being written or stamped this way. So I'm super happy that I did it, and I really love the way that this full title page ends up looking. I did pull out a little bit more of that scrapbooking paper, and I just cut a small little rectangle and then ripped it in half, because I do love a ripped edge. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that. And then I'm just going to cut out a bunch of those little pieces of the PET tape and then trim some of these big floral bouquets in half so that I've got something to tuck underneath my ripped paper. For this piece of PET tape that I'm about to lay down right now, I accidentally went to cover up a piece of penciling that I had placed in for where I wanted my numbers to go. Thankfully, the PET tape came up pretty easily, so I was able to kind of pull it back up before I had smushed it all the way down, and I was able to erase those pencil marks. I believe this one that I'm adding right now is actually going to be the last one that I add for this particular page. And then I will move on to my next page, which is going to be the year at a glance. So it's not a year at a glance. This is going to be my future log. And for my future log, since I'm hoping that this journal will last me for 6 months, I am just doing the first 6 months of the year. I don't really like the idea of setting up a journal for a full 12 months and then filling in stuff for months that aren't going to be in that journal. So I'm just doing January through July for all of the pages that I'll be doing in my setup for this. And then, like I said, anything that I want to last for the full year, I will do in a yearly collections journal, like I mentioned earlier. For the numbers that I'm going to be stamping down on this future log, I am using Mink ink from Close to My Heart. This is one of my all-time favorite inks. I actually really should buy a re-inker for this because I'll be super upset once it starts finally drying out because I love it so much. So after I got my numbers stamped out, I decided to try and do a scripty writing of just January, February, March, April, May, June. And my hand was still really shaky at this point, so I really, really dislike the way this came out, and I might end up doing something to cover this up at a later time. I left it for this setup, but I really don't like the way that this looks, so I might change this up a little bit later on. I'm also going to highlight every other box in this particular setup in my future log portion. For the way that I'm planning to fill this out, I'm just going to, if anything is happening during this month that I want to make sure I note for whenever I actually plan for that month, I'm just going to write the day number in the first dot grid space, and then after that I'll just write what's happening. Like for instance, if we've got a birthday in March, I'll just write the day of the birthday, 5 or whatever, and then the name of whoever's birthday that is. So I'll include birthdays and holidays on this spread, and then any events that might be coming up as well. And then anything else that I feel like I might need to remember for a future time for these 6 months. Now that I've got all of the base portion of the setup done, I will go ahead and start adding some more of that PET tape just to kind of get a little bit of decoration added to this spread as well. For my title, I will pull out this scrapbooking paper again. I'm going to rip the top and bottom off so it's got a little bit of that ripped edge that we all know that I love. And then I'm going to stamp future log on this scrapbooking paper. Once I've got future log stamped out, I'm actually going to fold the paper in half because I want to have equal amounts of the paper on both sides of my crease because I'm planning to place this in the middle of the crease. So I'm just going to fold that in half and create my own little crease, and that's where I will cut. And then I will place each side of that paper on the crease, on each side of the crease of my actual notebook. Then I will add a little bit more of that PET tape across the top of both pages to kind of just bring that into this page as well. The PET tape itself is not the kind of embellishment or extra item that I struggle with remembering to add to the pages. I do add this to every single page in the setup. But I believe on the next page, I'm going to pull in some washi tape that I didn't originally plan to use. And then I will have to kind of come back and incorporate that into this page and my title page. And then once I get a little bit closer to the end, I also forget about this scrapbooking paper that I was using. So then I'm going to go in and try and incorporate that into the last couple of pages that I missed it on there as well. But I'll probably talk about that a little bit more once I actually get to those pages to talk about kind of what I did to add them in and where they went. But the last thing that I'll be doing on this page is just kind of getting the various PET tape portions that I'm cutting out added across the top of the page. while I was working with this PET tape, I really made a conscious effort to try not to throw anything out that you could like visibly tell what it is, especially when I was working with these larger bouquet or even like the wreath pieces like the one that I'm working with now. If I was placing it off of the edge of my paper, I would cut off the part that would like obviously not be adhered to the paper, and then I would kind of try and position that to work someplace else on my spread. Another example was at the beginning page when I was doing my pocket. I did have a small portion that I cut off of another place, but it had like a very sharp edge, and I just placed that sharp edge underneath my pocket so you wouldn't see the abrupt ending of the design, so it still kind of worked. And I really like the PET tape for this reason because it's clear tape, so it's not super noticeable unless there's like direct light shining on it. Moving along, my next page here, it's probably not going to apply to most people, but if you make any type of content, it could apply to you. I created a content planning page in my Q4 setup for my Traveler's Notebook bullet journal last year, or this year, I guess, technically, because the new year hasn't started yet. But I absolutely loved it, and I got so much use out of it. So I'm definitely going to be including that in my setup again for this kind of term of bullet journal, I guess. It's basically just, I'm sure that there is some type of planning method that this is actually called, but it's kind of like a list, and on the larger portion of the like chart that I'm making, I will title my video, like, so whatever my video title will be, I am writing down the title, and then on the second portion of the chart, quote unquote, I'm literally doing air quotes with my fingers, but like you can't see that. I am adding 5 different steps that it takes for me to do my video. So I have a planning stage, a filming stage, an editing stage, a cover photo stage, and then the upload or schedule. So I have a row for each of those tasks. And once I've decided that I want to do a video, I will place it under the content section. And then as I finish each step, I can just kind of put a little checkbox underneath each of those steps. And there we go. So I pulled out a different washi tape on this particular spread because I felt like I would be wasting too much of the PET tape if I tried to use some of those larger bouquets to cover the edges of like my blank edges of the page. And I didn't want to do that, and I had this washi tape that I felt like matched the color scheme pretty well. So I just added a strip to each side, and then I'm going to use some of the leftover like cut off pieces of that PET tape that I have and place them down on the bottom right hand side and the bottom left hand side of the page. And this is, like I said earlier, where I added in another element where this is not in the first 2 pages, and I will come back in a little bit later on and add those back into the first 2 pages. If you watched my reading journal setup, I did talk a little bit about how I always seem to just add something new halfway through my setups and then realize that I'm halfway through my setup, and now I have to go backwards and kind of incorporate that thing that I added in into my beginning pages so that it's not just randomly there and it doesn't really go with anything. So that's what I'll end up doing a little bit later on towards the end of the video, is going back and adding some of this washi tape to the first 2 pages, as well as then adding it forward to the next couple of pages as well when I'm doing those setups. And then once again, the last thing that I'll do on this particular page is just adding in some of that decorative PET tape. One thing that I do like to do for this particular spread that I did not do on video because I completely forgot about it is I like to highlight every other row of my content planner spread and then do a vertical line under each of the steps. So it turns the step portion into kind of like a checkered look, and then I have a row for each of the content that I'm planning. I did that off camera though. We are now on my next spread, and these 2 pages are actually going to be trackers. Now, I know I mentioned that I was going to be doing a yearly collections journal, but this isn't really something that I want to be able to track yearly. I want to have the information that these 2 spreads are going to house available to me at the ready. So like, as a primary example, if I'm going to the doctor's office and I'm complaining about something, and then I can reference back to these 2 spreads. So one of them is going to be a cycle tracker, because if you're a lady, you know, every time you go to the doctor's office, they always ask you when your last cycle was. And me being me, I absolutely never know. So I started tracking it in my bullet journal last quarter or Q4 of this year, and it's been tremendously helpful. So I'm going to add a cycle tracker into this particular setup, and I'm also adding in a headache tracker as well. I'm going to give my headaches kind of like a rating, so it's either going to be a migraine or just a regular headache, but I haven't picked out like what kind of icon I guess I will be using for that just yet, so I haven't added that in yet. But that's what these 2 trackers are going to be for, and since I will be carrying this journal around with me, if I'm at the doctor's and I'm, you know, complaining about how many headaches I'm having, I can kind of pull my journal out and be like, no, look, it's really an issue. Look how many headaches I've had this month, and kind of show like on a chart type aspect, like, you know what I mean. But that's really all that I'm going to be having on this page. Is I just have 1 through 31 written out for each day of the month, or the most possible days in a month. And then I have rows for, or columns, I guess, for January, February, March, April, May, and June. And then I titled each section, and now I'm just going to add a little bit more of that PET tape so that we've got a little bit of decoration on this page as well. For this page, I'm just kind of doing like a diagonal, like little bit of decoration. So I have the top left-hand corner of the left-hand side, and then the bottom right of the right-hand side is where my decorations will be for each of these ones. And for my final spread in today's setup, I am going to be doing a when did I last page, and then a themes at a glance page. And now that I'm watching this and thinking back, I don't think I've mentioned really how I am doing the line work for my setups. So for any of the outer lines that I'm drawing, I am using that 08 Pigma Micron. And then for the inner lines, most of the time, I'm then going down to the 05 just to have a little bit thinner of a line in some areas. Like my future log, I just used the 08 for all of it. For this when did I last page, I just used the 08 for all of it. And then I believe in my trackers, I used all 3. So I used the 08 for all of the outer lines, and then the 5 to separate some of the larger areas, and then the 01 for separating the months. So there is a lot of different sizes of microns going on here. So for these 2 pages, for my when did I last, I am just having a column for the task and then just a separate column for date. And then I figure that in that column, anytime I need to do something, I can just write the date. So instead of filling out per month or something like that, I can just write like 12/1 for the last time I changed the filter in the air conditioner or something like that. And then for the themes at a glance, I thought it would be really fun just to do a little snippet of each theme that I'll be doing in this journal, and just kind of adding a little bit of the elements that I used in that theme, or doodles, or whatever I end up doing. I thought it would be really fun to just have like a little themes at a glance page, plus I had an extra page here at the end, so why not? And then I am going in and just adding all of the PET tape for decorations for each of these 2 pages. And since I'm here at the last 2 pages, I'm really gonna put a lot of these miscellaneous pieces that I've got laying on my desk down. Some of these will also be added to my year at a glance and my grid spacing guide as well, but like I said, those will not be in this video, so you won't necessarily see that. But anything that is left over, once I actually get those 2 pieces done and added into my journal, any of the leftover kind of PET tape that I have, I'm just gonna throw them on there and just use those pieces up so they're not just kind of lingering around. I've got the 2 pieces of washi tape here, just a little tiny piece kind of thrown in so that I've got the washi tape on this page. I also added 2 tiny pieces to the spread before this. And then I will kind of flip back through once I finish getting all of these added to see if I was missing any anywhere else. Now I'm going to kind of start flipping through and making sure I have everything on every page. Here's where I realized that I need some of this washi tape on the future log page, so I'll add a little bit here, and then I'm just going to add a small piece to my title page as well, and I'm going to overlap that between both pages. Then I'll come back to my trackers and add just a little tiny piece of this patterned paper to this page, and I'm actually going to add this very similar to like a washi tape look, and I'm going to do that on my when did I last page and themes at a glance page as well. Well, that is all I have. Here is a final flip through of my setup. Let me know down in the comments below what you think, and if you made it to the end of this video, leave me a flower emoji in the comments and let me know what your favorite spread was in my setup. Are you using a bullet journal for 2024? If not, what are you using as your planning method? Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!